First Contact and the Revelation. Dr. Sarah Chen stared through the electron microscope, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of the display. Another 16-hour day at the Stanford Genetics Research Center was drawing to a close when every screen in the lab suddenly flickered. The building's emergency lights activated, bathing the sterile white room in pulsing red. Security breach in sectors 3 through 7, the AI system announced calmly. Unknown energy signatures detected. All personnel please remain at your stations. Sarah reached for her phone, but it was dead. So was her tablet. Even her neural implant had gone dark. Through the laboratory's reinforced windows, she saw them, 3 massive vessels hovering over the San Francisco Bay, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian in the setting sun. First Contact. After centuries of searching the stars, they had found us. Or rather, they had found her. The ships were elegant, almost organic in design, with sweeping curves that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As Sarah watched, smaller craft began descending from the vessels, their trajectory bringing them directly toward the research center. Security forces swarmed the building's perimeter, but they held their fire. Smart move. If these visitors wanted conflict, they would have started with a show of force, not this precise and deliberate approach. The lead shuttle landed in the campus courtyard with impossible grace. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, and a doorway simply materialized in its side. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the first alien emerged. They were magnificent. Tall, elegant humanoids with distinctly feline features, high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to glow from within, and delicate pointed ears that swiveled independently. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic in their precision. Each wore what appeared to be a form-fitting uniform that shifted colors like oil on water. Dr. Sarah Chen. The lead alien's voice was musical, with an underlying purr that made the hair on Sarah's neck stand up. I am Ambassador Ortay of the Linxian Confederation. We have traveled far to find you. Sarah found herself walking toward the courtyard, drawn by an inexplicable certainty that this moment would change everything. Security parted to let her through, their weapons lowered but ready. How do you know my name? She asked, proud that her voice remained steady. Ortay's lips curved in what might have been a smile. We have been monitoring Earth's scientific developments for some time. Your work on genetic repair mechanisms is precisely what we need. The ambassador's expression grew grave. Our species is dying, Dr. Chen. Despite our technological advancement, despite mastering interstellar travel and energy manipulation, we cannot solve the puzzle of our own DNA. Each generation becomes weaker, less fertile. Within 3 centuries, we will be extinct. Sarah's scientific mind was already racing, analyzing possibilities. And you think I can help? We know you can. Another Linxian stepped forward, this one wearing what appeared to be a scientific uniform. I am Kara, Chief Geneticist of the Confederation. Your recent papers on CRISPR V9 technology and quantum genetic encoding exactly parallel our own research. But you've solved problems that have stumped our best minds for generations. Sarah noticed something else now, subtle signs of genetic degradation in the Linxians. Slight asymmetry in facial features, occasional tremors in fine motor movements, varying degrees of pigmentation loss in their fur-like hair. We are not here to conquer, Ortay continued, seemingly reading her thoughts. We come seeking partnership. Your species possesses genetic diversity and adaptability we lost millennia ago in our pursuit of perfection. We believe a combination of human and Linxian DNA, guided by your insights, could save both our peoples. Both our peoples? Sarah asked sharply. What's wrong with human DNA? Kara's expression softened. Nothing yet, but our predictive models show humanity facing similar challenges within 1,000 years. Your technology and social development are following patterns remarkably similar to our own history. By helping us, you would be preventing humanity from facing the same crisis. A week ago, Sarah had been worried about grant funding and publication deadlines. Now she stood facing representatives of an advanced alien civilization, offering her the chance to solve the greatest genetic puzzle in known history. "If I agree to help," she said carefully, "I have conditions." Rattay's ears perked forward with interest. "Name them." "Complete transparency, full access to your genetic database and research facilities, a joint team of human and Linxian scientists, and everything we discover is shared equally between our species." The Linxians exchanged glances, and Sarah caught subtle changes in their fur patterns, some form of nonverbal communication she couldn't yet decode. "Agreed," Rattay said finally, "but we too have a condition. You must understand that this project is more than academic research. Our survival depends on practical application. Are you prepared to be not just a researcher, but a participant?" Sarah's heart raced as she grasped the full implications. They weren't just asking her to solve their genetic puzzle, they were asking her to help create a new future for both species. Looking into Kara's eyes, seeing the hope and fear there, Sarah made her decision. This was why she had become a scientist, not just to understand life, but to preserve it, protect it, help it evolve. "When do we start?" The sun set over San Francisco Bay, painting the alien ships in shades of gold and crimson. As Sarah followed the Linxians into their shuttle, she felt the weight of two species' futures settling onto her shoulders. But instead of fear, she felt exhilaration. Humanity's next great adventure was beginning, and she would help write its first chapter. Little did she know that across the galaxy, other forces were already moving to ensure that chapter would never be completed. Into the unknown. The Linxian research station hung in high orbit above Earth, a gleaming spiral of interconnected rings that seemed to dance in the starlight. After 2 weeks aboard, Sarah still found herself pausing at viewports, marveling at the sight of her home planet below. "The first time is always the hardest," Kara said, joining her at the window. The Linxian geneticist had become Sarah's constant companion, guiding her through both the technical and cultural challenges of her new environment. "Actually, I was thinking about the tissue samples we analyzed yesterday," Sarah replied, turning away from Earth's blue sphere. "The degradation pattern in your species' telomeres, it's not natural. Someone engineered this." Kara's fur rippled, and what Sarah had learned was a sign of distress. "We suspected as much, but hearing you confirm it," she hesitated. "There are gaps in our historical records. A period roughly 4,000 years ago that we call the Great Forgetting. We know our ancestors pursued genetic enhancement aggressively, but the details of what they did and why were lost." Sarah followed Kara through the station's curved corridors toward the main laboratory. The walls seemed to breathe, their surfaces constantly shifting to maintain optimal environmental conditions. Other Linxians they passed gave respectful nods, but Sarah noticed the way some of them watched her, with a mixture of hope and something that might have been fear. "Your ancestors were trying to create the perfect species," Sarah said as they entered the lab. "But perfection is the enemy of adaptation. They engineered out the very genetic diversity that would have let you evolve past these problems." The laboratory was a marvel of biotechnology. Holographic displays showed DNA structures floating in 3 dimensions, while quantum computers processed genetic sequences faster than Sarah could follow. A team of Linxian scientists worked at various stations, their movements precise despite the subtle tremors that betrayed their species' deterioration. "Look at this," Sarah said, pulling up her latest analysis. "Your genetic code has redundancies built in, fail-safes to prevent mutation. In theory, it's brilliant. In practice, it's killing us," Kara finished. "Without the ability to adapt, each generation becomes more susceptible to environmental stresses. Even minor radiation exposure can trigger cascading failures." Sarah manipulated the holographic display, highlighting specific sequences. "But here's what's fascinating. Your junk DNA, the parts your ancestors presumably considered unnecessary, it's not junk at all, it's encrypted." Kara's eyes widened. Encrypted, you mean? Your ancestors left themselves a backup plan. All the genetic diversity they engineered out, it's still there, just locked away. Sarah couldn't keep the excitement from her voice. We don't need to introduce human DNA to save your species. We just need to decrypt what's already there. A new voice interrupted them. An interesting theory, Dr. Chen, but perhaps a dangerous one. Sarah turned to see Ambassador Rattay entering the lab, accompanied by a Lynxian she hadn't met before. This one was older, her fur streaked with silver, her bearing regal despite visible signs of genetic deterioration. "Hi, Matriarch Vissen," Kara said, bowing deeply. "We weren't expecting you." The matriarch's gaze fixed on Sarah with unsettling intensity. When one speaks of rewriting the genetic destiny of our species, the Council takes notice. "Tell me, Dr. Chen, have you considered the implications of what you propose?" Sarah met the matriarch's gaze steadily. "With respect, High Matriarch, I'm proposing to restore what was lost, not rewrite anything. Your ancestors left this failsafe for a reason." "Our ancestors," Vissen said coldly, "nearly destroyed us with their arrogance. The Great Forgetting was not an accident, Dr. Chen. Some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sarah felt Kara tense beside her. "Knowledge isn't dangerous," Sarah countered. "Fear is dangerous. Fear of change, fear of the unknown. That's what's killing your people. Your ancestors made mistakes, yes, but they were wise enough to leave you a way to fix them." Vissen's fur rippled in complex patterns Sarah couldn't read. "You sound very certain for someone who has known of our existence for mere weeks." "I'm certain because it's in the data." Sarah gestured at the holographic display. "Your people are dying because they can't adapt. We can restore that ability. The only question is whether you'll let us." The matriarch studied her for a long moment. "You remind me of stories from before the Great Forgetting. Brilliant minds who thought they could improve upon nature itself. Do you know how it ended, Dr. Chen?" "No," Sarah admitted, "but I know how this will end if we do nothing. Your people deserve a chance at a future, a real future, not just a carefully managed decline." Vissen turned to Rattay. "The human is either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both." Her gaze returned to Sarah. "You have 1 month to prove your theory. If you succeed, you will have the Council's full support. If you fail," she left the threat unspoken. After the matriarch and ambassador departed, Kara released a breath Sarah hadn't realized she'd been holding. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Kara said, unconsciously echoing Vissen's words. Sarah was already turning back to her work. "Then we'd better make sure it was brave. Show me everything you have on pre-forgetting genetic structures. And Kara." She paused, meeting her colleague's eyes. "Why do I get the feeling there's a lot more about your history you haven't told me?" Kara's expression was troubled. "Because, my friend, there are some secrets that even the Council doesn't know, and they're about to come looking for us." As if to emphasize her words, a distant alarm began to sound, and the station's lights flickered ominously. Their time was running out faster than anyone had realized. Shadows of truth. The alarms had barely faded when chaos erupted aboard the station. Sarah and Kara raced through the corridors, following the sounds of commotion. They arrived at the main docking bay to find it filled with armed Lynxian security forces, their weapons trained on a sleek vessel that had forced its way through the station's defenses. "Impossible," Kara whispered. "That's a pre-forgetting ship." The vessel's hull bore the same organic curves as modern Lynxian technology, but there was something different about it, something older, more primal. As they watched, its surface rippled and a hatch materialized. "Nobody move," the security commander ordered as the hatch opened with a hiss of ancient machinery. The figure that emerged made Sarah gasp. It was a Lynxian, but unlike any she'd seen before. Tall, powerful, with pitch-black fur and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. No signs of genetic degradation were visible in its perfect form. "I am Marin," the newcomer announced, voice carrying effortlessly across the bay. "Last guardian of the true archives. And you, those burning eyes fixed on Sarah, are about to make a terrible mistake. Security forces moved to intercept Marin, but with movement too fast to follow, the Guardian was suddenly standing before Sarah and Kara. No one had seen them move. How? Kara breathed. The physical enhancement programs were lost millennia ago. Marin's laugh was without humor. Lost? No, young one. Hidden, as so much else was hidden. They turned to Sarah. You've discovered the encryption in our junk DNA. Did you never wonder why it was encrypted in the first place? Before Sarah could respond, Ambassador Artai burst into the docking bay, followed by a dozen council guards. Guardian, you dare violate sanctuary. I dare much more than that, Ambassador. Amrin's tail lashed in agitation. I dare to prevent history from repeating itself. Dr. Chen, before you proceed with your plans to unlock our ancestors' genetic legacy, you should know the truth of what that legacy contains. Sarah's scientific curiosity warred with her caution. What truth? Show them, Amrin commanded, and suddenly the air was filled with holographic projections. But these were unlike anything the station's technology could produce. These images were so real Sarah felt she could step into them. They showed a civilization at its height, Linctians with abilities that seemed godlike. They could reshape matter with a thought, heal any wound, live for centuries. But with each advancement, something was lost. The images showed a society fracturing, turning against itself. Our ancestors didn't restrict our genetics out of arrogance, Amrin explained. They did it out of desperation. The more perfect we became, the more we lost touch with our essential nature. We began to see ourselves as gods, and treated other species accordingly. The images shifted to scenes of conquest, of entire worlds brought to heel by beings of impossible power. Sarah watched in horror as civilizations fell before the might of the ancient Linctians. The great forgetting wasn't an accident, Amrin continued. It was a choice. Our ancestors, those few who retained their conscience, realized what we were becoming. They lopped away our full potential and erased the knowledge of how to access it. Better to decline slowly than to become monsters again. Kara's fur was fully bristled now, but we're dying. Surely there must be a middle ground. That's exactly what I've been working on, Sarah said suddenly, her mind racing. Look at these patterns in the encrypted sequences. They're not just on-off switches, they're more like genetic circuit breakers. We don't have to restore everything. We can be selective. Marin's eyes narrowed. You understand our genetic code better than many of our own scientists. Perhaps that is why you were chosen. Chosen. Sarah looked between Amrin and Rutai. What do you mean, chosen? The ambassador stepped forward, his expression grave. We didn't just randomly discover Earth, Dr. Chen. Your planet was marked in our most ancient records as the key to our salvation. Your species, your specific genetic line, was engineered by our ancestors. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. What? Before they locked away their power, Marin explained, our ancestors seeded several worlds with modified genetic material. Human beings carry fragments of our original genome, but altered to develop along a different path. You are what we could have been had we chosen wisdom over power. Sarah's mind was reeling, but her scientific training kicked in. That's why human DNA is compatible with yours. That's why I could understand the encryption. We're not just similar species, we're two branches of the same tree. And now you understand the true weight of your choice, Amrin said softly. You can save us, yes. But you must be very careful about how much of our ancestors' legacy you restore. Too much. And history repeats itself, Sarah finished. She turned to Kara, seeing her friend, her genetic cousin, she now realized, in a new light. We need to modify our approach. Instead of just decrypting the stored genes, we need to create something new. A combination of what your people lost and what humanity gained. Amrin nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why this moment was foretold. Not to restore what was, but to create what could be. Suddenly, the station shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, the station's AI announced. Energy signatures match forgotten-era technology. Marin's expression turned grim. It seems I was not the only guardian to survive the ages, and not all of us agree on the proper course of action. As if in response, the station shuddered again, harder this time. The battle for the future of both species was about to begin, and Sarah had a feeling her next decisions would reshape the destiny of two civilizations. "We need to get to the lab," she said firmly. "Now, before they can stop us." As they ran through the corridors, Sarah couldn't help but wonder. When humanity looked to the stars, dreaming of meeting alien life, had they really been remembering an ancient legacy buried in their very DNA? The answer would have to wait. Right now, they had a future to save, or doom, depending on what they found in those encrypted genes. Battle for evolution. The research station rocked with another impact as Sarah, Kara, and Umrin raced through the twisting corridors toward the main genetics lab. Emergency force fields flickered in and out of existence, trying to contain hull breaches caused by the attacking vessels. The other Guardians, Sarah gasped as they ran. What do they want? To restore everything, Umrin replied grimly. They believe our ancestors were weak to lock away our power. They've waited millennia for someone to crack the genetic encryption, and now they want it all back. They burst into the lab to find it in chaos. Holographic displays flickered with warning messages as the station's quantum computers struggled to maintain stability under the assault. Several Linxian scientists were already there, working frantically to save their research data. "How long until they breach our defenses?" Kara asked, immediately moving to secure their genetic samples. A massive explosion rocked the station, answering her question. Through the laboratory's viewport, Sarah watched as 3 ships of ancient design, their hulls gleaming with impossible geometries, moved into attack position. "We need to finish this now," Sarah said, pulling up her latest genetic models. "Kara, help me with the sequencing. Umrind, we need everything you know about the original encryption." As they worked, Sarah's mind raced through the implications of what they'd learned. Humanity wasn't just a random species that happened to be compatible with Linxian genetics. They were an engineered safeguard, developed to preserve what was best about the ancient Linxians while avoiding their worst mistakes. "Look at this," she said suddenly, highlighting a sequence in the holographic display. "The encrypted genes aren't just about physical enhancement. They're about consciousness itself. Your ancestors didn't just lock away their power, they locked away the part of themselves that made them want to use it." Umrin nodded solemnly. The hunger for power, the desire to dominate, it was encoded into our very DNA. The ancestors believed that by suppressing those traits, they could prevent future generations from repeating their mistakes. But they went too far, Kara added, understanding dawning in her eyes. They suppressed our ability to adapt along with our desire to conquer. Our drive to evolve became a drive to stagnate. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Warning klaxons blared as the station's AI announced, "Hull breach on Deck 7. Emergency containment failing." Sarah's fingers flew over the holographic controls. "We don't have to choose between stagnation and destruction. Look, human DNA has evolved natural checks and balances. We can use that as a template." She pulled up a new simulation, combining elements of both species' genetic codes. Instead of just unlocking the encrypted sequences, we can modify them. Create a new pattern that allows for growth and adaptation while maintaining ethical constraints. "Assuming it works," Kara said quietly. "We have no way to test it." Sarah met her friend's eyes. "Yes, we do. Use it on me first." "Absolutely not." Kara's fur bristled in alarm. "The risk is necessary," Sarah interrupted. "Think about it. I already carry fragments of the ancient Linxian genome. I'm the perfect test subject." The station shuddered again, and the lights flickered ominously. Through the viewport, they could see one of the attacking ships deploying some kind of boarding craft. Amrin stepped forward. She's right. And I will help stabilize the process with my own genetic pattern. Working with desperate speed, they prepared the treatment. Sarah tried to steady her hands as she helped Kara load the genetic package into an injection unit. Outside the lab, they could hear weapons fire. The other Guardians had breached the station. Remember, Sarah said as Kara prepared to administer the injection, whatever happens to me, the data from this will tell you how to save your people. Kara's hand trembled slightly. You're the bravest human I've ever met. Actually, Sarah managed a smile. I'm terrified. But sometimes being brave means doing what's necessary despite your fear. The injection stung, and for a moment nothing happened. Then Sarah felt it, a warmth spreading through her body, a tingling sensation that quickly turned to fire in her veins. She gasped, dropping to her knees as her vision blurred. Through the haze of transformation, she was dimly aware of the laboratory door burning open, of other Guardians entering, their forms terrible in their perfection. She heard Marin's voice raised in defiance, saw Kara standing protectively over her. Then everything changed. Sarah's consciousness expanded, her senses sharpening beyond anything she'd ever experienced. She could see the quantum fluctuations in the air, feel the electromagnetic fields generated by the station's systems. But unlike the ancient Linxians, this power came with something else, an innate understanding of its proper use, a natural resistance to the temptation of dominance. She stood, her body moving with a grace that matched any Guardian's, her mind clear despite the rush of new abilities. The attacking Guardians paused, sensing something unprecedented, power tempered by wisdom, strength guided by compassion. This is what your ancestors wanted, Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Not the death of power, but its maturation. Not the end of growth, but its proper direction. To demonstrate, she reached out with her new abilities, not to attack, but to heal. The station's damaged systems began repairing themselves. The other Guardians watched in astonishment as she demonstrated power equal to theirs, but used for creation rather than destruction. She is the proof, Amrin declared, the prophecy fulfilled, not through restoration of the old ways, but through the birth of something new. The attacking Guardians lowered their weapons, their perfect features showing confusion and, perhaps, the first glimmers of understanding. Sarah turned to Kara, who was staring at her in wonder. The treatment worked, but it did more than just combine our species' genetics. It fulfilled their original purpose. We can save your people, Kara, not by making them into gods again, but by helping them become something better. As if to underscore her words, Sarah felt the changes continuing within her, settling into a new pattern, neither fully human nor Linxian, but a bridge between both species' best qualities. The future they had fought for was finally within reach. But as Sarah looked at the mix of hope and fear on everyone's faces, she knew that the real work, the work of guiding two species into a new era of evolution, was just beginning. Evolution's dawn, the aftermath of Sarah's transformation, rippled through both human and Linxian society like a shockwave. Word spread quickly. The experiment had succeeded, but in ways no one had anticipated. Sarah Chen had become living proof that there was a middle path between stagnation and destructive power. In the weeks that followed, the research station became a hub of feverish activity. Scientists from both species worked together to understand and refine the process Sarah had undergone. The attacking Guardians, after witnessing the success of the hybrid genetics, had joined their efforts, bringing with them knowledge preserved from before the Great Forgetting. The changes are still stabilizing, Sarah explained to the combined Earth-Linxian Council. Her new form radiated a subtle energy that made the air shimmer, but her humanity remained intact, enhanced rather than overwhelmed. Each person who undergoes the treatment will develop differently, based on their own genetic potential and personal choices. The council chamber, hastily constructed in the station's largest hall, was filled to capacity. Human representatives sat alongside Linxian officials, their former differences forgotten in the face of what they'd witnessed. But is it safe? asked one of the human delegates, eyeing Sarah's altered form with a mixture of fear and fascination. Safer than the alternative, Kara answered, standing beside her friend. We've run thousands of simulations. The hybrid genetics include natural limiters, psychological and physical barriers that prevent the development of destructive tendencies. High Matriarch Vissen, who had opposed their work initially, now studied Sarah with keen interest. Show them, she commanded. Sarah nodded and raised her hand. The air above the council table shimmered, and a perfect holographic representation of DNA appeared. But this was unlike any display technology they'd seen. Sarah was creating the image directly through her enhanced abilities. This is standard human DNA, she explained, the image shifting. And this is Lynxian DNA before their ancestors' modifications. Another shift. This is what the Guardians restored. The DNA structure became more complex, almost crystalline in its perfection. And this, one final shift. This is a hybrid form we've developed. The assembled officials leaned forward, mesmerized. The hybrid DNA structure was beautiful in its complexity, yet natural in its flow. It combined the stability of the ancient Lynxian genome with the adaptability of human genetics. The key difference, Sarah continued, is choice. The hybrid genetics don't force evolution in a particular direction. They provide potential, but each individual's development will be guided by their own decisions and ethical framework. You mean we get to choose how we evolve? A young human scientist asked, excitement clear in her voice. Within limits, Amrin answered. The Guardian had become one of their strongest supporters after seeing the results. The hybrid genetics include what you might call ethical failsafes, biological imperatives that make it physically impossible to use the enhanced abilities for destructive purposes. A Lynxian counselor raised an objection. But who decides what constitutes destructive purposes? Who sets these ethical parameters? Sarah smiled. That's the beautiful part. The parameters arise naturally from the combination of human empathy and Lynxian wisdom. It's not programmed control, it's more like evolved conscience. To demonstrate, Sarah created another hologram, this one showing her own transformation process. The council watched in amazement as the recording showed her gaining abilities similar to the ancient Lynxians, but with a crucial difference. Each new power came with an intuitive understanding of its proper use. We're not creating gods, she explained. We're creating better versions of ourselves, versions that naturally understand the responsibility that comes with power. Kara stepped forward, her own transformation recently completed. Unlike Sarah's subtle energy, Kara's enhanced form manifested as a deeper connection to the biological world around her. Where she walked, plants grew stronger, and healing energies radiated from her presence. Each person's enhancement manifests differently, Kara explained, based on their natural inclinations and what they truly need, not what they think they want. The power serves the person, not the other way around. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a cure for the Lynxians' genetic degradation. It was a new chapter in the evolution of both species. There's something else you should see, Sarah said, her expression growing serious. She created a new hologram, this one showing the space around Earth and the Lynxian homeworld. The hybrid genetics don't just affect our bodies and minds. They're changing how we perceive reality itself. The image zoomed out, revealing patterns of energy connecting distant star systems, patterns that had always been there, but that normal humans and Lynxians couldn't perceive. We're all connected, Sarah explained. Every living thing, every planet, every star. The ancient Lynxians knew this, but lost sight of it in their pursuit of power. Humans sensed it but couldn't prove it. Now we can see it, understand it, and work with it. And this is only the beginning, Kara added. Each new generation will build on these changes, finding new ways to grow and adapt. Not through force or dominance, but through understanding and cooperation. The council chamber erupted in discussion, but Sarah's attention was drawn elsewhere. Through her enhanced senses, she could feel something stirring in the fabric of space-time itself, a response to the changes they were initiating. "It's happening, isn't it?" Marin asked quietly, noting her distraction. "The prophecy spoke of this, the awakening." Sarah nodded. "Both our species were part of something larger, something we're only beginning to understand. This isn't just about saving the Lynxians or advancing humanity. It's about remembering who we really are and what we can become together." As if in response to her words, a subtle vibration passed through the station, through all of space itself. Every enhanced individual felt it, the first tremors of a greater awakening, as two species began their journey toward a shared destiny that their ancestors had only dreamed of. The real evolution was just beginning. Legacy of Two Worlds. 10 years had passed since the first successful hybrid transformation. Earth and Felinia, the Lynxian homeworld, had changed in ways that even the most optimistic predictions hadn't anticipated. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive joint research facility that now orbited between both worlds, watching ships move gracefully between the planets. "Still watching the stars." Kara's familiar voice came from behind her. Like Sarah, Kara had evolved further over the decade, her form now radiating a subtle bioluminescence that reflected her deep connection to living systems. "Remembering where we started," Sarah replied, turning to her friend. "Sometimes it's hard to believe how far we've come." The station itself was a testament to their progress. Built using a combination of enhanced human ingenuity and Lynxian biotechnology, it served as both a research center and a symbol of unity between the species. Its organic architecture grew and adapted to the needs of its inhabitants, while quantum computers integrated seamlessly with hybrid-enhanced minds. "The first generation is graduating today," Kara reminded her. "Would you like to meet them?" Sarah smiled. The first generation, children born to enhanced parents from both species, had developed abilities that surpassed even their parents. But more importantly, they had grown up without the ancient prejudices and fears that had nearly destroyed both civilizations. They made their way to the station's central amphitheater, where hundreds of young humans and Lynxians gathered. Some showed obvious signs of their hybrid heritage, subtle fur patterns, enhanced sensory organs, or the characteristic energy aura of the transformed. Others appeared outwardly normal, their changes manifesting in more subtle ways. Marin, now the head of the Unity Council, stood at the podium. The former Guardian had aged little in the past decade, that ancient form finally finding balance between power and wisdom. 10 years ago, Marin began, we stood at a crossroads. Our species faced extinction, humanity faced stagnation, and the legacy of our ancestors threatened to tear us apart. Today, we celebrate not just survival, but transcendence. Sarah watched the graduates with pride. Each had developed unique abilities suited to their individual paths. Some had become healers, able to cure diseases that had once been thought incurable. Others had developed unprecedented scientific insights, their enhanced minds perceiving patterns in reality that had previously been invisible. "The connection grows stronger," Kara whispered, referring to the subtle web of consciousness that now linked all enhanced individuals. Not a hive mind, but a deeper awareness of their shared existence and purpose. Sarah nodded. The connection had been an unexpected development, a natural emergence from a hybrid genetics that allowed enhanced humans and Lynxians to share knowledge and experiences across vast distances. It had accelerated their development far beyond what anyone had predicted. "There have been challenges," Marin continued. "Change never comes without cost, but we have faced each obstacle together, growing stronger through cooperation rather than competition." Indeed, the past decade hadn't been without its struggles. Some had resisted the changes, fearing the loss of their traditional identities. Others had sought to abuse the transformation process, though the built-in ethical constraints had prevented the worst outcomes. But with each challenge, both species had adapted and grown. "The next phase begins today," Marin announced. "Our long-range sensors have detected signals from other worlds, civilizations facing their own evolutionary crossroads. The question before us now is, do we share what we have learned? A murmur ran through the audience. This was news even to Sarah. Through the connection, she could sense the mix of excitement and apprehension among the enhanced. We've been chosen again, she realized aloud. Not just to save ourselves, but to help others find their path. Kara touched her arm gently. Just as your humanity helps save us from our past, perhaps our combined wisdom can help others avoid our mistakes. The ceremony continued, but Sarah's mind was already racing with possibilities. The hybrid genetics had done more than save two species. They had created something entirely new. Each generation developed new abilities, new insights, new ways of understanding the universe. Later, after the celebrations had ended, Sarah stood with Kara and Amarin in the station's botanical garden. The plants here were themselves products of hybrid evolution, their bioluminescent flowers responding to the moods and thoughts of those nearby. We've received transmissions from 3 different systems, Amarin explained. All show signs of genetic engineering gone wrong. All are reaching the same crisis point our ancestors faced. And all were seeded by the ancient Linxians, Kara added, like humanity was. Sarah watched a flower pulse with gentle light as she considered the implications. We're not just finding our lost cousins, she said slowly. We're rebuilding the family tree, but this time we can do it right. The real question, Amarin said, is whether we're ready for that responsibility. Sarah thought about the graduates she'd seen today, about the wisdom and compassion that had developed alongside their powers. She thought about how far both species had come from their original crisis. We're ready, she said firmly. Not because we're perfect, but because we understand that perfection isn't the goal. Evolution is about adaptation, about finding balance, about growing without losing what makes us who we are. As if in response to her words, the connection hummed with shared purpose. Across 2 worlds, enhanced humans and Linxians felt the resonance of this new mission. They had found their path forward, not through domination or isolation, but through helping others find their own way to evolve. Besides, Sarah added with a smile, we have something our ancestors didn't. What's that? Kara asked. Each other. Human adaptability, Linxian wisdom, and the understanding that true power comes from working together. The garden's flowers blazed with sudden light, reflecting the surge of shared purpose through the connection. Above them, the endless stars beckoned, not as conquest to be won, but as family to be found, helped, and welcomed home. The story that had begun with a desperate search for survival had become something far greater, a legacy of hope for all species seeking their path to the future. And it had all started with one human geneticist who dared to believe that evolution meant more than just survival of the fittest. It meant growing wise enough to help others survive too.